Hall of Fame writer Eric Duhatschek spoke on the top Habs trade targets, and how he doesn't believe it's Marty Necas or Trevor Zegras who will be the most likely. He actually has two other names that we've heard before that he thinks could be a fantastic fit. We're going to dive into these names, plus Marc Dumont does a little dive into the Habs forwards heading into this season and how one specific type of move could really benefit the Montreal Canadiens. All of that coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. And before we get into the video, last time I asked you guys this, it really did well, and over half you watching this are not subscribed. We got daily Montreal Canadiens news, and tomorrow, July 15th, depending on when you're watching this video, there's a live tier list where you can join us live at 6:15 p.m. Eastern, where we're doing a tier list ranking of the top 25 Habs prospects. So if you want to be a part of that and you want to enjoy all the latest Habs news, hit subscribe down below so you don't miss a thing. Jesse, we're going to start with some moves. They gotta be coming. Something has to happen. We're talking about this every day, and we're gonna keep talking about this until something happens. And if you're sick of it, too bad, because there's always something to be said. Now, when you look at the Habs forwards, Jesse, there's, well, the first thing that kind of jumps out is maybe a lack of depth, and that was something that was really explored by Marc Dumont in his article just today. And I want to show you the first thing that he showed in this article, and you can feel free to pause, look at this depth chart. This is not like a lineup prediction, it's just pure depth chart. You can see the left wing depth is really questionable. The right wing depth kind of is too. Center depth is okay, and you'll probably move Newhook to the wing, but this is tough. And he went on to say this in the article. He said, simply put, the Habs could stand to add short-term reinforcements up front. They can get another serviceable center and a winger, and that would do wonders in ensuring the Habs would have a chance to ice at least two lines that are worth defending on any given night, because right now the top line's kind of the only one. He said, ideally, they would add long-term reinforcements in both positions, but as we already discussed, it can't be a player who's on the wrong side of 30 and is headed for an inevitable decline. This is very true, Jesse, and this is something that we've talked about a lot on the show. Adding that depth type of scoring to this roster, whether it's a Daniel Sprong type of guy who might be a decently cheap contract for 1 or 2 years, or even trading for a guy that's not a superstar, not projected to be a superstar, but someone that can just add some extra punch to a line that's not the top line. I think the more we're moving into this offseason, the more we're heading into next season, something like this has to be done.
Yeah, this was a great point made in this article. Phase one was getting our top line set. Obviously, really important. We're counting our lucky stars, the development of Slav. Okay, we got an amazing first line. Now, phase two is getting that support for them, creating that second line to really unlock these players, right? Because you can't really judge them until you have a first line. But again, I would say you can't really even fully judge them until they get the support that they need. And we're seeing from this list, there's definitely some gaps there, right? Where we're going to need a little bit of help. We're seeing on the left wing, particularly. But what's nice about us with Newhook, with Dach, is that it kind of offers the opportunity, for either a center or possibly a left winger in an ideal world to kind of come into the fold here. So I feel like this is going to be really important. This is why Kent isn't going to stand idly by, is his first line proved to him they can do something. And he can't really improve on other things till you know that that's taken care of. Now that he knows that it is, Kent is going to do something before the end of the summer, I believe, to really help this team where they need it the most, in the top six.
Yeah, that's the big worry, because I'm going to flash this up again. Sorry if I keep flashing this up, but just look at this, right? Just look at this. Now, there is a world, Newhook is probably going to end up going to the wing, but there's a world out there where Joshua Roy is the best winger outside the top line this year. I'm not saying that's a likely world. I think he still has a lot of development to go, but based on the flashes we saw from him, I think there's a real chance he's an impact player this year. I don't think he'll start on the second line or anything, but he could work his way up there. Obviously, Anderson could have another breakout. Gallagher was good the second half of the year. Same thing with Armia. And, maybe Dach plays more winger. But, there's a world where it's Roy, and that kind of shouldn't happen. So adding that depth scoring, I think, is almost underrated by us, by some fans at some points. Again, I hate to keep bringing up Daniel Sprong, because I don't think that's a guy we're going to sign or anything. But that type of player that has 15, 20 goal upside that you can just put into any line, he'll probably get you a goal every couple of games, right? Every 3, 4, 5 games, and it's going to work out for you, and just that extra little danger. So let us know down below if you think that kind of depth move might be coming from Montreal, because I think that's a real possibility. But Jesse, speaking of moves, we got to talk about a lot of the trade talk going around the Montreal Canadiens, and on The Athletic, recently, Eric Duhatschek, Hall of Fame writer, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with his name, and if not, check out the article down below, because it's a fantastic piece. But he was asked a question in his recent mailbag, and he was asked about the Montreal Canadiens and which of the following players would be best suited for the Habs' second line given their needs. Zegras, Necas, Kakko, or Kent Johnson? Which one's the most realistic? And I'm just going to jump straight into this. And, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. He said, among that group, Kent Johnson has the highest draft pedigree, legitimate upside to be a top 6 forward. As Montreal's rebuild continues, he will fit better with their nucleus than the other 3, even if Zegras is probably more skilled. But he said Kakko is probably the easiest to acquire. You'd have to have scouts in your organization who see something in him that a succession of New York Rangers coaches hasn't to date. Maybe he's a Lehkonen type waiting to break out. And I want to focus on this first, Jesse, a bit of Kaapo Kakko talk, because he was a Jeff Gorton draft pick, right? Jeff Gorton and co. So, if there's any team that sees an upside with him, I think it's the Habs. And I think with these guys, more than like Dach or Newhook, this is less of a reclamation if they go for it. I think if they decide to make one of these moves, it'd be more like, we see you making an impact right now in a new, better situation.
Yeah, well, for Kakko, actually, he was the player with the highest draft pedigree being selected, second overall, right? So, and we see that talent is definitely there. He had a career high of 18 goals 2 seasons ago, but we're seeing he missed 20 games from last year. You have to feel, Josh, in those 20 games that he missed, 21 to be exact, that he could have got those 5 goals he needs. Like, we're looking at another world. If he's staying healthy, he's having a career year in terms of goal. Now, for me, it's a pass, but there's still potential there. For me, that is really clear. And that's why we need to talk about this and kind of debate a little bit, because we can just remember just last year, Alexis Lafreniere, again, first overall, highly touted, selected so early in the first round. Everybody was just thinking he was a bust, right? And now we're kind of looking at his numbers and we're just seeing kind of a very good evolution, right? Now, Kakko hasn't been able to take that big step up that Lafreniere was really able to do, like, scored 10 plus goals, a whole bunch more points, everything else. But you have to feel like maybe being put into another situation could help him a lot, right? I'm careful to make the analogies to Dach all the same, but again, Dach, very highly touted, selected early in the first round, a little bit of injury trouble, but he's put into another situation here with Montreal, and he's looking like a phenomenal player. I think us as Montreal Canadiens fans, besides the injuries, we think he's going to turn a corner. Like, Kirby Dach is a fantastic player, right? So there's something to be said about sometimes taking a player, putting them into another environment. It can be done, especially if you do believe in your developmental system. That being said, just like looking at our chart, our depth chart from before, it's like I see so many very good third line guys there, without throwing Jayden. I'm careful to throw kind of another one into that mix, because we know Kent, he said, like, when he's dealing, he has a line, right, that he goes by. He says, this is what we want. This is what we're willing to give. And he doesn't really budge too much on that, right? So, like, for me, if he's saying, like, he wants a young and established type of player, you'd have to feel. But again, there might be the temptation to buy low. And because for me, like, Kakko's a guy that in his prime, I think it's safe to say he can score 20 goals every year. Is that a top 6? No, but that's still a pretty good player, right? And the Habs definitely need that goal scoring. So just because I see too much kind of similarities in their lineup, I would pass. But I mean, the skill is there. That potential might still very much come through.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I've kind of reserved myself to, I don't want another reclamation project. Like, I'm okay trading for a player with high upside, like a Rucker McGroarty, like we've been talking about, right? Like, a young guy who can make an impact as soon as they get to the team. But, like we kind of saw with Newhook, wasn't really getting the run in Colorado. And, like, we're going to see if we can develop him. We're going to see if we can develop Dach. While it is similar, if you go for a guy like Kakko or Johnson, it's like, I think these are guys who really just need to change of scenery. And that could immediately help your team. And again, who better than Jeff Gorton and co, who saw something in Kakko in the first place to kind of make a move for him. I'm still not sold on him either. But again, it could be interesting. The final guy I want to talk about, though, is Kent Johnson. A guy that had 40 points a couple of years ago, but was relegated to the AHL just last season. He's had a bit of turmoil there in Columbus, but my gosh, his skill is amazing. Somehow still only 21, even though it feels like he's been in the league for years. This is a very interesting player to me, Jesse. And I think for him, the opportunity would be there in Montreal to play with very talented players right away, number one. And I think number two, a change of scenery is absolutely perfect for him. Coming over from Columbus to Montreal, a team that would be willing to give him a lot of that time. No worries about, some organizational issues that they have kind of gone through a bit of turmoil as of late, right? It's a new start, a new fresh start for him. I don't want to spend too much time on him, but I think of all the players listed here, I know Marty Natchez we've talked about a lot. Johnson is more of like a prospecty type move. Like, he's not that much older than Rucker McGroarty. Like, they're very similar. I think he's like a year older, year and a half older. But like, that's one of those guys that, like, he's almost like a prospect in a lot of ways. But he's a prospect with a bunch of NHL experience already. And a guy that fits the timeline, fits the Habs team well, has that pedigree, has already had like a 40-point season in the NHL. if Columbus is willing to move on from him for not a crazy price, to me, I agree with Eric completely. This is that guy that you got to go for.
I would have to say that out of the players listed, that Necas would be the best fit for the Montreal Canadiens, but he's being highly valued. You know, Ken Johnson by the Columbus Blue Jackets right now, and for a reason, right? They see something there. They're having the new coaching staff. They feel they can turn around the corner. So to your point, Josh, that says a lot. It's like they feel like sometimes having new development, having a new voice, it matters a lot because these are young players. Obviously, you're being selected so early in the first round of the NHL draft. You have skill. It's there. There's maybe some mental, maybe some things you need to unlock there. But in terms of being able to play hockey, he's got the size, can clearly do it. A little bit more of a playmaker as well. For me, you know, I'd like to still see a little bit more. If I saw just a little bit more over the course of a season, I'd be like, yes, let's go for that player, right? But just because I haven't seen quite enough of a track record yet, it makes me just like a little bit hesitant. But I mean, the Columbus Blue Jackets might be very well served by being patient with this player.
Yeah, and by all accounts, that's what's happening. But they are, you know, there's always some question marks with the Blue Jackets, right? They're not a great team right now. Do they want to stay in a rebuild? They still have Line A. They'll probably trade him. They still have Gaudreau. What are they going to do there? There's so many weird pieces going around there. Werenski's not getting any younger, though he is still going to be very good for a long time. If they want to be competitive, they might have to move out a young guy, but in that case, Montreal would have to send back something that's more NHL ready. Who knows what could happen? But regardless, it's always fun to talk about who the Habs could bring in into trade, which young players they could bring in. And it's fun to see, you know, very, very good writers talk about the same stuff. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on these guys. Out of these two, Kakko or Kent Johnson, which one do you prefer? Is it Kent? Is it Kakko? We'd love to hear from you down below. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. And guys, don't forget, Monday, July 15th, 6:15 p.m. Eastern, be part of our live tier list ranking of the top 25 Habs prospects. We'd love to have you there. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.